hear people talk about change all the time. They say they need to get back on track, that they should be doing more, or that one of these days they're going to turn things around. And the truth is, they probably mean it. They're not lying. They feel the discomfort. They see the gap between where they are and where they could be. But here's what I've learned. Nothing happens just because someone says they want it. Nothing happens just because someone's tired of how things are. Things only change when you get serious. Not interested, not curious, not lightly motivated. Serious, that's the word. Because until you get serious, nothing changes. You might want better results, but you won't get them. You might think about better habits, but you won't keep them. You might even start strong, but you'll fall right back into old patterns the moment it gets inconvenient. Why? Because you haven't crossed the line yet. You haven't made the real decision. And the real decision doesn't sound like I should. It sounds like I must, starting now. I've seen this again and again. A person struggles for years, financially, physically, mentally. Then one day something clicks. They draw a line, they get serious, and within months everything starts shifting. Not because life suddenly got easier, not because the world changed, but because they changed. They stopped tolerating average. They stopped waiting for the perfect time. They stopped asking if they felt ready. They just got serious. And seriousness makes all the difference. And you can see it. You can feel it in someone. There's a look in their eye, a tone in their voice. You don't have to wonder if they're serious. You just know. Because when someone really decides, they stop negotiating. They stop talking about what they're going to do. They're already doing it. They're moving. They're building. They're focused. They're done playing around with their future. And here's the honest truth. Most people never get there. They stay interested, but not committed. Motivated, but not consistent. And so year after year, they stay stuck. They read more books. They listen to more advice. They make more plans, but nothing really changes. Because deep down, they still haven't decided. They're still hoping something external will push them. A breakthrough, a mentor, a windfall. But the push they're waiting for never comes, because it was never supposed to come from the outside. It had to come from within. So that's where we begin, with the truth that nothing in your life will change. Not for good, not in a lasting way, until you get serious. Not until you stop dabbling. Not until you stop hoping. Not until you stop treating your future like it's optional. Seriousness is the switch. And the day you flip it is the day everything begins to change. You can always tell when someone's not serious, not because of what they say, but because of what they do. They talk a lot. They've got plans. They've got dreams. They keep saying what they're going to do. They've been talking about getting in shape for years. They've been about to start that business since last summer. And they always have the same explanation. They've just been busy, things have been crazy, or they'll do it once things settle down. But nothing ever settles down, and nothing ever changes. You know why? Because they're not serious. That's all it is. They're interested, they're curious, but they're not committed. They're dabbling in change, testing the waters, waiting for it to feel easy. But change doesn't feel easy. It feels inconvenient. It feels uncomfortable. It takes sacrifice. And if you're not serious, you'll never pay the price. You'll just keep searching for a discount. I've met people who've been trying to get out of debt for a decade. Every year they say this is the year they'll get it under control. But what do? They spend the same way. They save the same way. They make the same choices. Why? Because they haven't gotten serious. They don't have a plan. They don't have boundaries. They haven't made the real decision. They just hope things magically improve. But hope is not a strategy. Discipline is. Same thing with health. You don't gain 40 pounds overnight. And you don't lose it overnight either. But people will say they've tried everything. No, most haven't. Most have tried being interested. They've tried being excited for a week, but they haven't gotten serious. They skip meals or look for shortcuts. But they won't go for a walk every day. They won't stay consistent with sleep. They won't keep a routine for more than a few days. And then they wonder why. Nothing sticks. It's not the program. It's the level of seriousness. And you see it in how people manage time. The person who's not serious is always behind, always scattered, always getting around to it. Their calendar is a mess. Their routine is random. They don't protect their mornings. They don't prepare for their days. And because of that, they live in constant reaction. Everything's urgent. Everything's last minute. And they're stressed all the time. Why? Not because they have too much going on, but because they're not serious about managing their time. Here's what happens when you're not serious. You let everything slide. You lower the bar without even realizing it. One missed day becomes a missed week. One excuse becomes 5. You rationalize, you postpone. You tell yourself it's not that bad or that you'll catch up later. But later never comes, because casual behavior becomes casual identity. And casual identity leads to casual results. It's automatic. I've seen people who are smart, talented, full of potential, but they never go anywhere. And it's not because they're missing opportunity. It's because they're missing seriousness. They treat their goals like a hobby. They treat their problems like someone else's fault. And they live in this middle zone, not fully failing, but never really moving forward, just drifting, going through the motions, wishing for things to improve, but not doing the work that improvement requires. You know what that life looks like? It looks exhausting because you're always frustrated. You're always busy, but you're not getting anywhere. You start things, but don't finish them. You talk about goals, but don't pursue them. You feel guilty all the time because you know deep down you're capable of more, but you're not doing what it takes. And that gap between who you are and who you could be, that gap hurts. That gap is where regret lives. And eventually, if you're not careful, you start to get comfortable in that gap. You start saying it's not that bad or that you're doing okay. But okay isn't what you were built for. Okay isn't why you're here. You weren't meant to coast. You weren't meant to drift. You were meant to grow. You were meant to build. You were meant to become something more. But none of that happens until you stop being casual and get serious. So what happens when you're not serious? Simple. Nothing. Nothing meaningful. Nothing lasting. You get more of the same. You stay in the same place with the same problems, wondering why things don't change. But it's not the world that needs to change. It's your level of commitment, your level of urgency, your level of discipline. Because until that shifts, nothing else will. There's a moment when it clicks. Not always dramatic, not always loud, but unmistakable. You feel it. Something shifts inside you. You've had enough. You've watched yourself make the same excuses, run the same patterns, drift through the same days. And suddenly, you're done. You draw a line. Not because someone told you to. Not because you read another book, but because something inside finally says, that's it. That's the day you get serious. And everything changes, not your circumstances. Those might look exactly the same. Same job, same bank account, same scale, but you're not the same. You walk different. You think different. You talk different. You stop negotiating with your old habits. You stop looking for loopholes. You stop postponing the hard stuff. Why? Because you made the decision. You're not trying anymore, you're doing. The day you get serious, clarity shows up. Decisions become simpler. Not easier, but simpler. You don't spend hours debating what you feel like doing. You already decided. You made the commitment. So now it's just execution. No more checking how motivated you are. You don't need motivation. You've got direction. Motivation is emotional. Direction is structural. And seriousness gives you that structure. I remember when I made that decision for myself. Nothing on the outside looked different that day, but on the inside, it was a complete reset. The excuses that used to sound so reasonable, suddenly they sounded ridiculous. The stories I used to tell myself, gone. The comfort zones I used to protect, torn down. Not because someone gave me a secret formula, but because I finally said, I've had enough. You see it in people. One day they're distracted, disorganized, disheartened, and the next, they're moving like they've got a fire inside them. Same life, same challenges, but a different person behind the wheel. That's what seriousness does. It gives you your power back. And once you taste that power, real power, the power of decision, you don't want to go back. You can't, because you've seen what you're capable of. And here's what's incredible. You don't need to be perfect to make progress. You don't need to know everything. You just need to decide. The moment you get serious, your mind starts working for you instead of against you. Your time becomes focused. Your priorities tighten up. You stop chasing distractions. You stop giving energy to things that don't deserve it. You become more protective of your attention, more selective with your choices. People around you start to notice too, not because you announced it, but because you live it. You're sharper, quieter maybe, more intentional. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to convince others. You're not interested in applause. You're interested in results. You're building. You're focused. And suddenly, all those things you've been wanting for years, they don't feel so far away anymore, because now you're moving toward them daily. And it's not just about discipline. It's about identity. The day you get serious isn't just the day you start new habits. It's the day you become someone new. You stop being someone who tries and you become someone who follows through. You stop being someone who's working on it and you become someone who finishes. You stop living in potential and start living in proof. That shift changes everything, because now failure isn't something to fear. It's something to learn from. Setbacks don't derail you, they refine you. Discomfort doesn't stop you, it sharpens you. That's the difference seriousness makes. It changes your entire relationship with effort, with time, with progress. You stop avoiding the work and start respecting it. The day you get serious might look ordinary to the world, but to you, it's the most important day of your life, because it's the day the drift ends, the day you stop running in circles, the day you stop lying to yourself about why things haven't changed. And from that moment forward, you move different, you build different, you live different. The day you get serious is the day your standards start to change. You look at the same behaviors you used to tolerate, and they just don't sit right anymore. Skipping workouts, wasting money, sleeping in, making excuses. What used to feel normal now feels unacceptable. Not because someone gave you a lecture, not because you read it in a book, but because your internal line moved. You raised your standards. And when your standards go up, everything else starts to catch up. See, most people don't lack desire. They lack standards. They say they want better, but they'll accept less. They say they want success, but they tolerate distractions. They say they want change, but they keep justifying the same behaviors. And every time you justify a low standard, you reinforce it. You build an identity around it, and your life will never rise higher than the standard you've set for yourself. You know when someone's raised their standards. You can feel it. They don't talk about change. They embody it. They don't explain their goals. They live them. You watch the way they work, the way they speak, the way they treat their time, and you know, they expect more from themselves now. And when you expect more from yourself, you start getting more. It's automatic. Not overnight, but over time. The results have no choice but to rise to meet your new expectations. And it's not about being harsh. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about being honest. You stop giving yourself the easy way out. You stop saying, at least you tried. You stop settling for effort without results. Because raised standards don't just measure effort, they measure consistency. They measure execution. They measure follow-through. Let me put it bluntly. What you tolerate, you reinforce. If you tolerate sloppiness in your work, you reinforce it. If you tolerate procrastination, you reinforce it. If you tolerate excuses in your language, you reinforce that mindset. But when you raise the bar, even just a little, you start to create a new normal. And that new normal becomes your baseline. It's where your day starts, not where it ends. You stop saying things like, that's just how you are. And you start saying, that's who you were. You don't accept being the same person this year that you were last year. You expect growth. You expect maturity. You expect follow-through. And when you fall short, you don't ignore it. You notice it. You fix it. That's what high standards do. They make you more aware, more accountable, more responsible for the way you live. And here's the real shift. Your standards begin to define your identity. You no longer act out of feeling. You act out of principle. You don't just go to the gym because you're motivated. You go because you're a disciplined person. You don't just read because you're interested. You read because that's what someone at your level does. You don't just save money because you want to. You save because you're building something. Because you're someone who handles things differently now. When you raise your standards, you start to attract new problems. And that's a good thing. You go from dealing with chaos to dealing with complexity. From dealing with messes to dealing with decisions. You don't eliminate all struggle, but you upgrade the level of struggle. Because you're not stuck anymore. You're not spinning in circles. You're moving forward. You're building something better. And that's worth every ounce of effort. You don't get serious just to work harder. You get serious so you can live better. You get serious so you stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You get serious so you can spend more of your life doing what's meaningful. But none of that happens if your standards stay low. You've got to raise them for your time, for your energy, for your relationships, for your future. Because here's the truth. When you raise your standards, life has to respond. Opportunities come looking for people who are ready. And the best way to be ready is to expect more from yourself before anyone else expects it from you. Getting serious is the turning point. But staying serious, that takes structure. The emotion might get you started, but it's the system that keeps you going. And if you don't build the right structure around your seriousness, it's only a matter of time before you drift back into old patterns. Because life is busy. Life is noisy. And if you don't protect your new standards, the world will pull you right back to average. Structure means you don't leave things to chance. You don't rely on memory. You don't wait for motivation. You don't hope the day goes well. You set it up. You prepare. You build routines that support who you've decided to become. Not the old version of you, the new one, the serious one, the disciplined one, the one that follows through. You wake up at a set time, not because it's trendy, but because your priorities are clear. You block off time for the things that matter: thinking, planning, reading, working, resting. And you defend that time. You don't let the trivial invade the essential. You stop letting everyone else's urgency become your emergency. That's what structure does. It gives your seriousness a place to live. Most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they're unstructured. They've got good intentions, but their schedule's a mess. Their environment's full of distractions. They're trying to be disciplined in the middle of chaos. But discipline doesn't survive in chaos. It needs order, it needs rhythm. And if you don't create that rhythm, you'll fall right back into reaction mode. Busy, stressed, distracted, but not progressing. So you have to design your day with intention, not perfectly, not rigidly, but deliberately. You decide what time the day starts. You decide what gets your energy. You decide what gets postponed or ignored. And once you set those rules, you live by them. That's structure. That's what seriousness looks like on a Tuesday afternoon when no one's watching. Structure isn't about making life harder. It's about making decisions easier. When you've already decided what matters and when it happens, you don't waste energy redeciding every day. Should I go to the gym? Should I write? Should I plan? No, you already decided. Now you just follow the plan. Structure removes the emotion from decision making, and that's a gift, because if you wait to feel like it, you'll lose half your days to indecision. Here's another key piece of structure: your environment. Your surroundings should match your seriousness. If you want focus, clear the clutter. If you want discipline, remove distractions. If you want to be sharp, stop hanging around people who dull your edge. Environment matters more than people realize, because it's shaping you every day, either reinforcing your commitment or pulling you away from it. So be ruthless about what stays in your space. And don't forget accountability. Serious people don't try to do everything alone. They build support around them, not cheerleaders. Accountability. Someone who checks in. Someone who reminds you what you said you were going to do. Someone who holds the mirror up when you start slipping. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. When you're serious, you don't avoid accountability, you seek it out. Because you care more about progress than pride. Structure means your life begins to reflect your commitment. It's in your calendar. It's in your habits. It's in your space. It's in your systems. You don't just talk serious, you live serious. And that kind of alignment, it's powerful. Because now every part of your life is working with you, not against you. Getting serious is the start. But staying serious, that's where the real work is. That's where growth happens. That's where momentum builds. And the key is structure. Simple, repeatable, intentional structure. That's what makes discipline sustainable. That's what turns a decision into a lifestyle. That's what turns seriousness into results. There's a cost to staying casual, and it's higher than most people think. It doesn't show up all at once. It shows up quietly, slowly, in conversations you avoid, in opportunities you miss, in the slow erosion of confidence that comes from knowing you're capable of more, but doing less. That's the cost. You don't notice it in the beginning. You just feel a little behind, a little overwhelmed, a little disappointed, but then it becomes normal. You get used to starting over, used to falling short, used to letting things slide. And pretty soon, low effort becomes your default. And you look around and wonder, how did I end up here? The answer: you never got serious. Every year that passes without a real decision stacks up. The books you didn't read, the money you didn't save, the health routines you didn't follow, the conversations you didn't have. At first, it just feels like you're putting things off, but eventually it starts to look like regret. Regret has a way of catching up with you, quietly. You don't feel it